40 years ago, big tobacco hijacked our food system. Today, we're joined by a husband and wife entrepreneurial duo who are working to reclaim that system and rethink how food and wellness should taste and how it should work. As the CEO and CMO of a health-focused brand known for great tasting sugar-free electrolyte powders, they're now taking their talent to the big screen with an eye-opening documentary. This is the story of Breaking Big Food with Patrick Sullivan Jr. and Ashley Leroux Sullivan. Guys, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having us on. We've been looking forward to this discussion.
Yeah,
It
and
was
don't
like,
forget, we also have a puppy involved in our
I was
podcast as
gonna say
well on
you
our
you
side.
probably you have
Hi.
three little mascots I heard, puppy
We
dogs.
certainly do. This one is Monk, and he loves a good podcast session.
That's right. He's in all of our podcasts with
That's
I
us.
right.
always love having the pets on, especially when they start barking and everyone starts freaking out about like what's going on in the podcast and feel we have to restart it. But hopefully that one will be good for this whole time because this is a big topic we have to talk about. It's food, right? It's the thing you put into you every single day. And we kind of forget that the quality really determines our health and how we feel and live. So let me start there. What brought you to take on this huge undertaking of actually making a documentary?
Well, it was the summer of 2024, and we were kind of actually about to make a different documentary. And we actually were not that inspired by the topic. So we said, you know what? What if we were to focus on food? We had just met Callie Means. Callie Means, co-author of the book Good Energy, which came
Yeah.
out early in 2024. And we saw him speak at a conference and thought, you know what? Here's a guy that's talking about the problems that we're seeing in America with the health system. And he's talking about it from the perspective of someone who was once a lobbyist for Coca-Cola and for other big food interests, and who sat in on some of the meetings and the discussions about, how do we get how do we get crappier food into schools, right?
Right.
Like,
Essentially,
and,
yes.
and of course, nobody was saying like, how do we get crappier food? It's like, how do we sell more of our product? It's just that those products tended to not be so healthy for us. So after seeing Callie speak at a conference and saying, here's a guy that has really put the pieces of the puzzle together in a way that's easy to kind of understand, starting with in the 1980s, when, as you mentioned in your opening monologue, when big tobacco started to buy up many of the big food companies and apply the big tobacco playbook to big food, is it any wonder that 40 years later, we're seeing that the United States spends the absolute number one most on healthcare each year, and yet I believe we're ranked 49th in life expectancy. Something is wrong, and it might just be the food that we're putting into our bellies.
Absolutely. And, when you started to dive into this, and by the way, Callie's like a wonderful, just narrator of everything about this. I think he's a wonderful spokesperson. And I had his sister on, Casey, to talk about that Good Energy book. And they make great points throughout it. But still, it seems that the majority of the population is not aware that we've kind of been co-opted and this whole industry has gotten pretty rotten, right? And so when you started to dive down into this, what were some of the findings that you put in the movie, of course, and the documentary that really started to shock you almost?
Well, the subtitle of the movie, the full title is Breaking Big Food: How the American Food System Went Rotten
Yep.
and How It's Being Revived. And so I would say the movie does two things. One, it's a little bit of investigative journalism showing how we got here. But then the second half, and woven throughout, are these vignettes of different food producers, really mostly based in our Phoenix metro area, which we live in Scottsdale, that were inspiring to us, and in fact inspired us to create Firefly Organic Coffee and Market at our Jigsaw Health headquarters. And so we visited these locations, farms, micro markets in Fountain Hills, and we kind of were wanting to learn, like, why did you do what you do? How have you done it? And the film ended up becoming the word that we have heard most often from people who've watched it is inspiring.
Mm.
People feel like, okay, now I understand like how things got a little crazy and I'm seeing a template of what you guys did. It's like people that are like, maybe I want to start raising chickens in my backyard. Maybe I want to start my own organic coffee shop. I don't know, Ash, let me hand it to you. What is one of the like crazy things that you feel like we found in the filming of Breaking Big Food?
I think that just the storylines of a couple of the health transformation people that we have in the film, and just the similarity, like obviously it's all pointing back to the food and from Leah Hope, who lost, 200 pounds, just by changing her diet alone. And of course, moving more and exercising, but like it was the food. And she's like, I was just going to convenience. I didn't really think about it. I didn't know it was bad. Like just,
Yeah.
even the doctors aren't telling us because they don't, they don't take any nutrition courses. So it's just bringing awareness to it. To Landon Flowers, who had no idea what was wrong with him. He was working out all the time. He thought he was eating healthy. Maybe he was picking the healthier of the fast food windows to go to on a regular basis. But when he realized he was practically on death's doorstep. I mean, this poor
Mm.
guy lost like an immense amount of weight, and he couldn't even hardly get out of bed until he changed his diet to a whole food diet, and he started to come back to life within just a couple of weeks of making some tweaks. His story is incredible, and it's just like so touching for us to have been able to feature them in this documentary, and it's so eye-opening that we need to spread the word.
Yeah.
Right. And I think what you said there is really important that there's a lack of awareness. There are so
Hmm.
many people out there that are eating a certain way saying this is healthy, right? This is there's nothing wrong with these packaged foods I'm getting that say low fat, that say have all these nutritions in there and they're backed by different medical, organizations on it that are paid for. And so slowly but surely they eat that year after year after year. And slowly there's a poisoning of the body that they don't even recognize till it's too late. Something breaks in the body. You go, it's usually told you blame your genes, not the food you're eating. You get
That's
put
Mhm.
right.
on a drug. Did you see any kind of connection of where big food is and where big pharma is? Because that's what I'm really curious about. I can understand big tobacco became big food. But I think a lot of people, and I even see this with the Callies and others, are trying to, look at, is this all kind of co-opted in a sense to keep us sick, which is a sick person is a very, very profitable one.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. A sick person is a very profitable customer for big
Yes.
pharma. And there's elements of when you go back to Rockefeller, and I think it was like the 1930s that really began to change medicine and to support medical schools, but to use petroleum byproducts as quote unquote medicine because it could be patented. A lot of things seem to have gone off the rails since then. And then, Callie talks extensively about, just follow the money, essentially, follow the interests of, if you, I think it was Valium in like maybe the 1970s that kind of became the first pill that big pharma had at their disposal that was something that, wait, they don't just take it a couple times like an antibiotic. You take it for, you take a course for 5 days and it fixes you, right? Quote unquote. But like Valium turned into this like, oh, they take it every day and they never get off of it. So it completely changed the business model of big pharma starting in the 1970s with Valium. And while we don't really go too far down that rabbit hole in Breaking Big Food, numerous episodes that Callie and Dr. Casey, his sister, have been on, really go into that. So when we were preparing for this film, I mentioned that we saw Callie speak at a conference, and one day Ash and I were kind of working on the concept, the narrative, the big picture, if you will, of Breaking Big Food. And we kind of wrote out what we felt like the synopsis would be. Emailed Callie through a friend of ours, Michael Fishman, and Callie was like, "I love it. Let's do this." And then like a week later, he was going on Joe Rogan's program. And
Yeah.
then a week after that, he was going on Tucker Carlson. And we're like, boy, did we catch a tiger by the tail right here. This is like incredible. So
Yeah, and we're really lucky because he lives right here in Arizona.
Mm.
So it was easier to get him into the studio.
Have you seen any pushback yourselves from even the organizations or people out there? Obviously, you look at Cali, you look at RFK, you look at even the guidelines that just came out in the food pyramid. And it's like mainstream media is suddenly attacking it's too expensive. This and that. It's like everyone's just trying to do something healthy here, and it seems it gets attacked a lot when it does. Obviously, there's big organizations with a lot of money on the other side of it. Have you guys seen or felt any of that heat from anybody yet?
I don't know that we have felt any specific attacks like
Yeah.
on our movie yet. We
Although it
feel
just came
like
out on Apple and Amazon this
Right.
week. Prior to that, it was just kind of like leaked to YouTube. So
Mm.
there, hopefully we won't, but it possibly we will. Didn't mean to interrupt there, but there have been a handful of people that have said, this is just all like a movie for rich people because like people can't afford to eat this way. And so that is absolutely something that we expect to hear more of. But
that's absolutely where I was going to go. On the comments on YouTube, I would say the sort of biggest pushback is like, good luck trying to eat organic.
Yeah, yeah,
Good luck trying to get, farmers, to pay for this or, to switch from monocrop government subsidies to regenerative farming. And I would say that in general, I agree, but we have to start somewhere. And I very much believe in, the capitalistic free market that where there is demand, you know, supply will fill that niche. And when supply builds up, it drives prices down. You think about the first plasma screen TV
right.
cost $25,000 and now you can, buy a 85-inch TV for $700 because demand filled it and also innovation that occurred. So I think that I don't know if this discussion is happening, but I would really be hopeful that, like, the United States, we have, I believe it's like the U.S. Farm Bureau. We also have a small business loans in the United States. I would love for farmers or want to be entrepreneurial farmers to be able to get really cheap money loans at a very good price. I don't think it should just be like, here, take the money, because I think we would lead to too much fraud. But I think that if you could get a government backed loan at a cheap rate, and maybe you're inspired by The Biggest Little Farm, another great documentary that Ashley and I watched a couple of years ago of a couple from, Los Angeles that moved out to the country, took over a desolate monocropped farm, and over the course of 7 years turned it into a regenerative organic farm. And I guess it's stuff like that, it's stories like that I feel like Americans need to see to be inspired and to have a little bit of a blueprint for how we fix the food in America. I think that is a really important aspect of our film.
Yeah, it's an aspect of your film, and it's an aspect I hear over and over again from guests, expert people out there, is that we really need to reevaluate the relationship we have with food. If you're saying that, hey, this food is too expensive, but the alternative is cancer, the alternative is diabetes for the rest of then you have to put a value to it and say, are we willing to pay a dollar or two more, or are we willing to put in the money into that so that we could drive down the cost, like you said? I remember I was just having a meeting before this on, we do a supplement, has NAD in it. NAD used to be incredibly expensive, right? It's $1,000 an IV, and we put it in there. And it's just, the more the demand went up when you had the Justin Biebers doing IVs and everything who got other people involved, the more they were able to drop the price of it. So you could
Yep.
actually start to see everything moving that direction. What was once for the rich is suddenly becoming more and more affordable as the demand goes up. So you absolutely, can get there. You just have to start to show that there is a huge value in spending just a little bit, possibly more, and putting the attention there. But then there's the other side of that also. You have to be able to show that these products are good for you, right? And a lot of times you see these kind of nutritional labels and you say, this looks good, but then there's something hidden in it. in your case, what you kind of brought up before we even got started, and what you put in the documentary was this case of mold in coffee. Can you go into
Yeah.
what you saw there? Because I feel that so many people don't know. Of course, there's minorities that understand that and do coffee enemas and don't want anything mold, but the vast majority just go to Dunkin' Donuts or just buy any cheap coffee fold and don't even realize what may be in there that would never be listed on the nutritional facts.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to hand that to Ashley, but first I want to come back to something that you said
Yeah.
that when we were talking about cost of things, I was reminded and thinking about AJ Richards from thefarm.org. He and his partner Brooke were featured in Breaking Big Food. And I heard a phrase from AJ that really has stuck with me that you can pay the farmer now or pay pharma later.
Yes.
And I think that that really is what you're kind of looking at in terms of trade-offs. That's how important the food that you're putting into your body is. Ash, why don't you talk
Well,
about our,
and on that note, for those listening that don't have a budget to go buy organic food at this time, anything that is just not packaged is still an upgrade.
Yes.
So many Americans are depending on packaged food, whether it's ready to drink protein shake or that are disguised as healthy, but no one, like so many people, don't understand how to properly read a nutritional label, and so it is those hidden ingredients in there. It's the preservatives, it's the seed oils, it's all of these things that wreak havoc on our microbiome and basically our mitochondria and everything that lead to these various diseases. Where if you can just get eggs and ground beef or apples, like just whole foods, like
yeah,
that is a significant upgrade over packaged food.
yeah, packaged burritos, packaged
Yes, the
Doritos.
convenience
Yeah.
food is what is really the biggest problem.
Yeah.
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 You want to talk about mold-free
So yeah,
coffee?
coffee. It was interesting how this came to be. I mean, Patrick and I are big coffee lovers, and we drink it every morning. And then we developed a afternoon latte habit over the last couple of years, where we really look forward to leaving the house and going somewhere and having a latte and just kind of like taking a break for a minute. And then I ended up actually getting a mycotoxin test to see if I had any toxins, essentially, and like four different types of mold showed up on my test, likely from food. And so I started to think, what are the top foods that are kind of the culprits of mold? And as we did a little bit more research on it, coffee is one of the main culprits. And I'm like, well, I'm drinking this multiple times every day. How many people are probably drinking this multiple times every day? I know it's a very, very big number. And the awareness of this little known fact is just, I mean, we've got to figure out a way to let people know that this is super important to pay attention to. Because even, there are a lot of people that pay attention to their food and they, like us, we bought organic when we can, we try to eat whole foods, but I wasn't even thinking about the coffee.
Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah. When we realized that like in Scottsdale, Fountain Hills, there's really no organic coffee shops. Ashley's like, everything that we buy to cook at home is like fresh, natural, organic, but then we're going out and drinking coffee that might have mold in it. The milk might have hormones or pesticides in it, and the syrups may have high fructose corn syrup in it. What
God
if,
knows what.
yeah, what if we could next to our indoor pickleball courts, which is a whole nother story,
We'll
at,
get into
at our
that.
office at Jigsaw Health headquarters, what if we could put in a organic coffee shop? And so we started looking at, okay, well, how do we source this? And we tasted a lot of different coffee. Registered organic beans are pretty hard to find. If you look at it, I think by the numbers, only about 2% of coffee in the world is registered organic, meaning it's registered with the USDA. That doesn't mean that it's not necessarily grown organically. Coffee is not really grown in the United States. It's really grown closer to the equator. But you can imagine small family farms not necessarily wanting to comply with USDA regulations. That's kind of why it's so few and far between that it's organic
Exactly.
coffee, yeah, is not generally registered. And then you look at like specialty coffee, which is anything that scores an 80 or above on various, only about 1% of the world's coffee is registered organic specialty coffee. So we were looking at that and looking, so very small niche to begin with when we were searching for the beans that we wanted to use, number one. And then number two, we wanted to make sure that we liked the taste of it. So we tasted a lot of coffee and we are like, I don't know. We finally found a roaster local here in Phoenix that had been working with a family farm in Honduras that they'd been working with for like 30 years. And they're like, this coffee tastes great. It's registered organic. Why don't you try it? We tasted it. We loved it. And then we did the next step, which was to take the coffee, send it into a lab for basically testing mold, mycotoxins, pesticides, glyphosate,
Heavy
heavy
metals.
metals,
Yeah. Like
PFAS,
pages of things.
you
Yeah.
name it. So, as
Because as a dietary supplement company, we do third-party testing on every single SKU that we have over
Right.
and above the testing that's already done, just to, it's like the trust but verify. So like, well, why wouldn't we do this with the coffee too?
when the
Yeah.
test work finally came back a couple weeks later, we were very nervous because we're like, we've already started swinging hammers on this new coffee shop, and we don't yet have like final say on what our beans are going to be. But the test results came back squeaky clean.
Spoiler alert
Yeah,
on
yeah, I
the
guess spoiler
documentary.
alert on the documentary. Maybe
But we were
stop me
super
next
happy.
time. Stop me from saying that. You have to watch the
I
documentary to
know.
find out.
You got to give them cliffhangers, right? People
Yeah,
want to
Yeah,
more, get them
exactly.
into
not a good
watching
storyteller. I'm sorry, guys.
it. No, it's one of those things, right? People just don't pick up on, but you see all the things you had to jump through, the hoops to get it to where it got that way. Do you feel that all of food needs to kind of act in that way, or is there still a way that we can have the food companies not have to jump through all the hoops and still provide healthier food? Because obviously, a lot of these companies won't go to all that you did to do the testing and they don't have to,
Right.
right? So I'm just wondering from your own perspective, is this something that everyone should have to do? Or is the consumers kind of demand and money going to go into those companies that do it and allow others the option that are obviously going to be somewhat cheaper, but have a huge question mark around them?
Probably the latter. I think, it's a lot to ask, small companies and, it can be expensive to go
Yeah.
run all these tests and do all the things. And it doesn't mean that their product isn't up to par and it isn't mold free or any of those things. So I do think it's probably going to be one of those things where it's like, if you know that you're very, like for me, for example, the mold in my test result, I'm only going to be searching that out and I'm going to pay extra because I know that for me, that's super important. Some people are better detoxers of mold. Patrick did the exact same thing and his was clean.
Sure.
So he just has better detox pathways than I do. So he could probably drink maybe a different brand and be able to detox that fine. But, for people that know that they need to pay attention to it or that just want to be extra careful, I think it's probably more likely that they would seek out specific people that are doing the third party testing, whereas there's a number, a percentage of people that are like, I don't really care. I don't want to think about it. And price matters more. And it's always going to be that way.
Yeah.
I think it'd be hard to make companies jump through all those hoops.
No, I agree with that too. And one thought was that Patrick also is probably affected, just didn't show. He just had the detox pathways, but that was energy probably needed to detox that could have went into other things and maybe made you feel a little bit better. So
Yeah.
even if it doesn't show, we have to realize that these things do impact us. They are toxins entering our body. Even if we have those amazing pathways or organs of elimination are working, they have to work a little bit harder, right?
Right.
So I think, and I do think there's this market that's growing at this rapid rate of people that were already exposed, such as yourself. I mean, the vast population isn't feeling well. It's
Right.
76% are with chronic disease now as an adult, right? They just put that out. RFK was talking about that. That's an insane amount of people that aren't feeling well. And they should be, or at least most of them, I think, are saying, well, how can I now feel better? And that's what drives people into this new sector of wanting to know it's mold free, wanting to know it's without preservatives and everything else in the food industry.
Exactly. And another storyline we touch on in the documentary is Patrick ending up getting diagnosed with thyroid cancer in 2017. I mean, he's in his 30s, he's a healthy male, young, and all of a sudden he feels a lump, and lo and behold, it's thyroid cancer. He had to get surgery to get it removed, but it's like no one can tell him how he got the thyroid
Yeah,
cancer. All they can say is, well, here's what we can do about it.
absolutely. Yeah.
And luckily there was, a surgery that they could do, but no one is going to say like, okay, let's figure out what caused this.
Right.
Well, we didn't really know how to read labels back then either. We've changed our diet and our lifestyle significantly since then because we were kind of forced through a very stressful situation to start taking a very close look and learning more.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
said 2017, you meant 2014.
Oh, yeah,
And
sorry,
so about
2014.
11, 12 years ago, that was not a fun time to be
Yeah.
me or you. It was very stressful.
I can imagine. I have to ask you this because I've just, I've been dealing with so many different doctors and people that have recently just seen an explosion of the cancer rates. And,
Mhm.
young people like yourself, Patrick,
Yeah.
20s, 30s, that shouldn't be your normal cancer patient. But they are, getting those diagnoses, which are incredibly scary, incredibly stressful. What would be your advice, or what did you do, Patrick, if you were to say, hey, if I were given that diagnosis, here's what I would do, especially as it relates to food, because those are actionable takes, right? What would be your advice to someone?
I feel like when we went to a Dr. Joe Dispenza event in September of
Mm,
2024, I learned a lot more about the importance of mindset. And I would say that mindset is the beginning. I actually feel like I can trace my thyroid cancer in 2014 to a long-term stressful situation that had been building and building and building in a startup company that I was working on where I didn't feel like my voice was being heard. And where's your
mm,
thyroid? Right in that fifth chakra, that fifth
yeah,
energy center. And, going through the meditation and understanding now the importance and really practicing meditation on a daily basis, I think that that is the very first place that I would recommend that someone starts, which is to really look at into Dr. Joe Dispenza and his books. Becoming Supernatural is a great place to start.
yeah.
If you can go to an event, I think you get sort of a hypercharged, like sort of like, okay, I'm in the midst of it. And when we went in 2024, just about what a year and a half ago, I was not at all really a meditator, but I was like, hey, if I'm here, I'm gonna commit to it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna like just go in with an open mind and open heart. And I felt like I had some really important revelations there. So that would really be my first thought. I mean, I empathize with anybody that gets a diagnosis. I felt like for me, like at the time, there was no scarier word than the word cancer. And one of the things that the doctors told me as I, went to try different opinions and stuff was like, I really felt like, okay, there's going to be an alternative, natural approach to resolving this lump that I'm feeling in my throat. And uh, one of the doctors that I talked to was like, well, thyroid cancer, one of the good things is that it's a very slow growing cancer. You at what was I at the time? Mid 30s, late 30s. He was like, so for you, I mean, you're young, you're generally healthy. There's a chance that, we could do some natural alternative therapies to actually decrease the size of this and make it go away. He goes, but because it's slow growing, it's also slow to die. It's slow to kill
Mm,
off. And, quite frankly, to be candid, Casper, I was having so much stress
yeah.
day in, day out. I was throwing up like almost every other day. It was hard to keep meals down, not because I felt sick or I was doing treatments or anything. It was just this bombardment of stress in my mind of like, am I gonna, die and make a widow out of my wonderful wife and um
The
it,
stress is the killer for
the
sure.
stress
Right.
is the killer. So
Yeah.
So I think, Dr. Joe Dispenza and others, but he's the one that really has, I've studied, and he appealed his message really appealed to me because it's it's woo-woo, but it's actually very scientifically based. And the
Yeah.
way that he explains meditation and thought process and energy centers, all of that together, it just really clicked for me in a way that I was like, well, that just seems very convincing to me. So yeah, I feel like it's had a very big impact on my life for the last year and a half for sure.
Oh, I appreciate that answer so much because I think people are looking for a silver bullet out there of, oh, do this one thing, take a peptide or this supplement or eat exactly this keto amount. And that's never the answer for everyone. It could work for some, but I do think everyone has that opportunity to take hold of their mental and emotional health and what, could be a huge driving factor in everything. And of course, stress and fear are so big.
Yeah.
And it all wraps together because usually if you're stressed, you're fearful, you're going to eat differently, you won't even, digest well and everything. So, of course, you still need to eat cleaner, but I do think looking into those aspects of dispense of meditation, everything are so vital. And we do overlook that, especially when we get these things, we look for the medicine to heal us. When we heal us, right? There is no medicine that
Amen.
heals us, right? And food heals us, but only if we choose to accept
Right.
the right food, right? So
Yeah.
these are
Right.
decisions we must make, and we have so much power over them. Even when you're in a fearful state and hear that terrible word cancer, and suddenly you feel, oh my God, that's the end of it, right? You still have so much power and to take over that side and do those types of actions of going to events. Like I think that's just so empowering because the other side is just wait and see and sit in that stress and fear. And that kind of sucks, right? And that's never
Yeah,
gonna
I mean,
help.
it really puts you in the victim mentality also,
Right.
and like that you are just a victim of circumstance and that you
Yeah,
don't have any power over it. And we're not taught in our culture that we do have power over it,
that's right.
mostly. So
No, I
yeah,
think conventional medicine kind of puts you in that victimhood state. Like you said, it doesn't matter why. We have a solution. It may not be the best solution to keep you healthy forever, but it'll keep you alive for now. And then there'll be a pill for the next thing and a pill on top of that when the next thing comes up. But
yeah.
I have to feel there's such a better way, and it includes that mental side. It includes food. And of course, it includes things like supplementation. And you guys have Jigsaw Health. You have this electrolyte, magnesium, potassium, these really essential minerals, right? What was the driving factor in creating that? Because of course, food gives us magnesium, and potassium, but I also know that our food is quite different. Over the last 40 years or so, it's been co-opted. So is the soil, so is farming. We're not getting as many of those nutrients. What was the story behind that and the start of Jigsaw Health?
Yeah, I think you nailed it right on the head in that the soil and the food that we typically see in the grocery store is not as nutritious as maybe it once was over the history of creation. So my dad and I started Jigsaw Health together, and it was really based on his health journey, his health odyssey, dealing with chronic health, recurrent challenges himself, dealing with fatigue, anxiety, trouble sleeping, GI distress, just a lot of sort of complex. Why do I feel crappy all the time? And one of the things that he, would do is, this is really kind of pre-internet, when he was trying to figure out what the heck is wrong with me, go to the library and grab a whatever health book he could find, and many of the health books had a section talking about like magnesium and a magnesium deficiency checklist. And so as he would kind of go through the checklist, he's like, well, I got all of these problems, I guess I need magnesium. So he'd go to the drugstore and get the first bottle of magnesium that he found. But magnesium is kind of notorious for also being a laxative at high dosage, especially if you're dealing with GI issues like my dad was. So every time he would try to like fix his magnesium deficiency, he just triggered his GI
Mm.
issues. And that was when he first sort of theorized, okay, if I could use a really absorbable form of magnesium, if I could make my own product with a very absorbable form of magnesium and then slow down the release, do like an extended release, or as we ended up, a sustained release technology, that I think could help me repair my magnesium deficiency, which would, help give my body so many of these other biochemical reactions that magnesium is involved in is a cofactor from energy to sleep to cramping to heartbeat to all these things that magnesium does inside of our body. So, Jigsaw was really in the beginning built for one person, my dad. And so, fortunately, over our history, we've been able to help a lot more customers that were, actually somewhat similar to my dad. And we've grown and evolved as a company over time, doing some electrolyte powders. Magnesium is one of the five electrolytes: magnesium, potassium, calcium, sodium, and chloride. And calcium and magnesium are kind of like two kids on a teeter-totter, balancing each other back and forth. Similar thing with potassium and sodium. And we at Jigsaw Health have really had more of a focus on magnesium and potassium because calcium and sodium are so prevalent in the diet already. Well, we are a dietary supplement company, right? So we're trying to help you supplement a diet that is likely going to generally be deficient in magnesium and potassium. So some of our best sellers are the Mag SRT, that's the sustained release tablet, the Mag Soothe, which is a nighttime magnesium powder. That's for sort of fast acting, helping to calm down the brain. And then our potassium cocktail powder, which is, basically the equivalent of two bananas worth of potassium. So a lot of great products that we've been able to put out and help our customers, with our tagline, as you can see on my shirt, it's
Yep.
fun to feel good. That's
And
the
boy, you
mission.
realize that when you don't feel good, you're like, God,
Yeah.
it really is a lot more fun when you feel good.
Yep.
Oh yeah. I mean, health is the greatest wealth for that, reason alone, right? It's the amount of time you have. We all have those 24 hours. It's how we feel also. When
Yeah.
people ask me, is that the greatest resource? I say I understand the case for time being your greatest resource, but I think the vitality and health you spend in is actually better. Even if you have all the time and freedom that you've got from living a great life and being success, if you don't have your health in that time, it's all for naught, right? And
Right.
that's so damn important. Now, are you in the case that everyone should be taking supplements all the time? I'm curious because of that lack of nutrients in the food system and everything.
Yeah.
I think years ago, so many people answered this differently. That supplement should only supplement when you have times of stress, sickness, acute things. But nowadays, it's a different story. We have so many toxins around us. Our food supply sucks, right? What are your guys' thoughts on, supplementation is just becoming part of almost your daily diet regimen?
I mean, I think that there's a case to be made that some people over supplement. Of course, there's always going to be that. But yes, you're right. With the food supply and the soil being depleted the way that it is, unless you were just insanely intentional about like tracking all of the nutrients and all of the minerals that you're getting, I think magnesium is one of those things that if like I
Yeah.
always say, if I went to a deserted island, I can only take one supplement with me, it would be the Mag SRT because it's just does so much inside the body. It's like it's a staple, really. But I think there are some other supplements like vitamin C. I typically only start to take that if I feel something coming on. So I feel like maybe it's a both and. Patrick, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of a funny question because obviously we're motivated to say, yes, people should supplement.
Obviously.
But I appreciate how you started your answer, Ash. I think that's kind of where I was going as well. My stack, if you will, is magnesium, cod liver oil, and beef liver supplements. I think there's a lot to like about liver. We typically don't get it in our diets. It is meaningful that when wolves take down an elk, they go to the liver, they go to the heart, they go to the kidneys. They're eating that naturally, and I think there's a lot of to stuff to there's a lot of proof that our ancestors ate a lot more of that. They ate nose to tail, so to speak. So those are, I would say, my three go-tos: the magnesium, cod liver oil, and beef liver supplements.
Yeah, it's crazy how if you look into nature, and I think that's where you could find so many answers as to how to live the healthiest. right? If you look at nature, of course, it's looking at circadian rhythms, how they live like that, and seasonally. But how many animals similar in our mammal history eat, right? And they do eat so much of it. And I do think that's a portion. I know that's not a big thing in America, and obviously, the food system is very kind of limited in some ways, but opening that up, I think people that start to go into Whole Foods and start to cook more, right? Start to see that you could apply some of these things. Use a old world blend that has some liver and heart in it, everything like that. Is that something you also are seeing, when you did the document? Do you see that things are kind of turning back to where they used to be, where you used to go get ingredients, not actual whole products, and start to cook, and that families are getting together more? Is that also a goal almost in the documentary, and what you're doing is to go back to easier times where food was truly sustaining and something you spent more around?
Yeah, in the documentary, one of the things that really inspired us to create Firefly was in our own town when we were living in Fountain Hills, which is a neighboring city to Scottsdale. There was a little micro market called Good Living Greens run by Jill and Jeremy Keith. And their story is that they were going to this farm to buy raw milk and that farm to buy pasture raised eggs and this farm to buy vegetables. And their neighbors started to be like, oh, can you pick up some for me? Right. And they kind of said, well, gosh, if we're picking all this up, why don't we just rent a little space in Fountain Hills? We'll have a market there. Well, we've done the research on the vendors, on the farmers, the food producers. How about we do that? And, also they picked up like Ethel Lane Bakery for, organic sourdough and stuff like that. And you kind of start to see, I feel like an older, like the market that has the staples that's for the community, not designed to be, okay, and now we're going to open up 6,000 Good Living Greens around America. It's like, no, this is, as they say in the documentary, our love letter to Fountain Hills and to the community of Fountain Hills. And how they got their name, Good Living Greens, is because they were growing their own greens, alfalfa sprouts and broccoli sprouts and stuff,
Microgreens, yeah.
microgreens
Yeah,
and stuff
yeah.
like that. And so, yeah, I do think that there is a growing awareness of the importance of food and how food should be federated at a local level. And it shouldn't be just like there's four meat packers in the entire United States. And if, God forbid, we run into another pandemic where nobody can go to work and it's like, oh, yeah, no, now the grocery stores are closed. I think, a big sort of rallying cry of breaking big food is to inspire much more local food.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a big part of that is really trying to see where are the farmers, where are the butchers, where are these people in my community? How can I befriend them? How can I get the best food? I will say that that's what we should be doing, not just going
Yeah.
into Whole
And
Foods alone as the only thing, but
Yeah, right.
and
actually meeting the local people.
if I'm voting with my wallet, I'm
Yeah.
actively helping them to build their business, which supports the farmers and the suppliers that they work with. Like we can change by voting. We can change the market and we can change what's on the shelves by voting with our dollars.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think more and more people are awakening to that's a much better alternative than the sickness route, right? We've gone down
Amen.
that too long for 4 decades, and everyone is feeling a little bit off these days and not at their best usually. And I think that's where it can start. It can start with the food. After that, of course, there's so many things you can continue to do, the mental side, movement, exercise, and also picking up different hobbies like pickleball, right? I
Yes.
mean, tell
There
me
you
about
go.
that because I just gotta hear this. I mean, you put it down as like your interesting fact. You play pickleball. You got it at your headquarters. Like, is that something that's really kind of changed your, perspective of like how you can incorporate movement and hobbies and joy into a normal workday?
Well, yes, pickleball has certainly been a great way for us to incorporate healthy movement and healthy socialization with friends
Yeah. Huge.
over the years. Ashley and I started playing pickleball in 2018, a little before it really kind of took off in 2020, but at Jigsaw Health signed like six of the top pro pickleballers in 2019 to represent Jigsaw Health. And we just kind of did a cannonball into the sport of pickleball because we were like, hey, this is like our tribe. This is our community. These are people that we really like. And one of the common problems of pickleballers is that it's so fun. You end up playing so much that you end up cramping.
Yeah.
Ah, well, step in with magnesium and potassium, those key electrolytes that you're probably not getting enough of. We can help you get that and prevent those kind of common cramps. So we really fell in love with pickleball. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this, we were getting ready to make another documentary. We've made a documentary before. It was called Breaking Pickleball. It's the story of the Arizona Pickleball League, the Arizona Pro Pickleball League that we started in 2023 and filmed it at the Orchard at Jigsaw Health. It's available on Amazon Prime. We were thinking about making Breaking Pickleball Part 2, but we felt like a sequel was going to be really difficult. That's when one day we had this really, Ashley had this revelation of what if we pivoted and focused on food?
Yeah, we were just
Yeah.
so inspired by Callie's presentation about the whole thing that we were like, we have to do something to help him amplify this message. We are in a unique position that we have this insanely good creative team, this team that can put together a very professional documentary. Callie lives here. Let's see if we can pull this off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what would you say is the real goal of people watching it? Would it be to have an appreciation for food, to make changes right off the bat? What would be your ultimate goal in everyone watching this documentary?
Just to be inspired
Yeah.
to do better,
Yeah.
be inspired to eat better,
Yeah.
to make better choices.
And realize that when you are making better choices with your wallet, if you can afford it, you're helping to support the ecosystem for others to continue to create those foods and to make that, but also eventually to shift and move the market. For one, am really hopeful that RFK Jr. and the things that are happening over the course of the last, not even quite a year that he has been the HHS secretary. I'm really inspired and hopeful of those changes. Flipping the food pyramid upside down 2 weeks ago, eat real food as the message, changing the childhood vaccine schedule for the CDC, banning petroleum-based food dyes. And one thing in particular on that, my understanding is that food makers, specifically Big Food, when they all, Bobby kind of brought all the big makers to the table and, specifically, I don't know why he chose food dyes to talk about first, but that was the subject. And my understanding is you have these like, Kellogg's and Nabisco basically saying, well, hey, we would love to stop using red dye number 40.
Hmm.
But if Nabisco can still use it, they're going to be able to make a product that's more colorful and less expensive if, we switch to beet juice for the coloring. So we can't have that. You, Bobby, have to change the playing field and ban some of this stuff because we won't do it ourselves.
We don't want to be the only people with ugly cereal.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Right.
So, I
I
think
know
that
it's wild. Yeah.
yeah, the government does play a role. I'm not a big government kind of person, but I think that they do have a role to play here with regards to regulation. I don't want over regulation, but I do want some regulation. And I think, actually great shout out to a documentary that just came out about a year ago called To Die For,
Yeah, we had them
DYE.
on recently.
Oh,
Yeah.
did you?
Yeah,
Excellent.
yeah,
Well,
great, great people. And yeah, that was right around the time it came out, that band there. And
yeah.
yeah, I agree with you that I am completely more of this libertarian, live and let be, like people need to make their own choices. But when it comes to this, you're correct because I remember having Dr. Palevsky on, who's big, pediatrician, just looks into vaccines, has testified about. He said, Casper, what incentive do vaccine makers have to make a safer vaccine? They're indemnified. They're like, you could do it. I agree. Because you're asking me, like, how can we make it safer? Okay. Have they ever had to ask that or anything? And if their duty, their fiduciary duty is to make the most profits, why would they put more into safety when they know they'll never be sued about it and they know they can make more money the other way? So
Amen.
when you combine those two, it is like, okay, that's where government intervention for the greatest good of the people makes sense, right? You can't
Yep.
indemnify someone from harm and then expect them to make safe products because of that. And so you start to open your eyes, and the same thing it is for big food. They have shareholders, and to keep their jobs at the top, they have to satisfy those shareholders with maximizing their profits. And
Right.
if that
Right.
means, hey, beet juice or red dye 40, like, uh-oh, that's a little bit pennies even, but my earnings per share will look better with those pennies there, and the competitors aren't getting an advantage on us, then of course I'm going to make that decision because
Yep.
it isn't about health first. It really is about profits first, which is how businesses work. So governments need to step in, right? I feel that that is a good case for government intervention.
Right. Right. And I realize that the name of the name of our documentary is Breaking Big Food. But I often, if not always, say, I'm not trying to put Kellogg's or Nabisco or whatever out of business. I'm hopeful that they will change because the market becomes more educated and starts to shift. And if Kellogg's or Nabisco or whomever sees a 3%, 7%, 11% decline in revenues,
Hmm.
their shareholders are going to be pissed, right?
Yes.
And if they realize that, oh, part of what's happening is because the market itself has moved, we have to change what we're doing. We have to change our own products. My hope is that, I think that there will be new entrepreneurial companies that grow from this. We're hopeful that in 2026 we get a lot of customers purchasing Firefly organic small batch coffee. But I also think that Kellogg's and Nabisco and all of them have so much useful infrastructure in place that for them to be able to pivot, to shift,
Oh, yeah.
and continue to use all that healthy, useful infrastructure. I don't think healthy infrastructure is probably the right way to say it, but useful infrastructure for good. I would love that. A better name for the title, for a better title for our documentary might have been like Changing Big Food's Mind,
Yeah.
but
And
that
That
title
would be an
sucks.
interesting follow-up where you get like the CEOs of the Bisco and everything,
Yeah,
Procter, get
yeah,
all of them.
exactly.
Have you changed your mind? Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
have you changed your mind? Have you modified your formulas?
Yeah.
They have the capability of doing it. We as a society tend to be pretty good with uh, shifting and voting with our dollars. And as long as we can vote with our dollars, we have a shot.
And I do believe that the shift is happening. You see more and more products that say no seed oils, avocado
Yes.
oil, beef tallow. Like they're
Yeah.
starting to get the picture. And I think whether these big food companies are on board with the truth behind it or, the reason behind it health wise, or they're just seeing like, hey, this shift is coming. It's time to jump on board and like start changing our formulas because people care more than ever. And they're just like basically trying to be ahead of the curve on if we don't jump on now, we're going to be left behind.
Yep.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's something that all of these companies could do because they've done it before. I remember
Right.
when Travis and Jason Kelsey were promoting cereals, and they got a lot of flack from Callie and
Yeah.
others. And they're like, "Hey man, chill out. We grew up on this." And they're like, "You grew up on a different kind of it. It didn't have all these dyes and
Yep.
preservatives and everything. You're thinking, the Fruit Loops are the Fruit Loops from the 80s or 70s. It's
Right.
not. That's the difference, right? We can go back there and okay, it's not the healthiest, but it's not as bad as it is
Right.
now and as addictive. So I think that's where the nuances of it come into play. We're not trying to say get rid of Fruit Loops, all those things. You could still have those options. I hope you make better choices, but as long as it's actually a better product what it used to be than a more riddled with kind of toxins and other things as it is
Harmful
now,
chemicals. Yeah.
that's a
Right.
great step in the right direction already, right?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So I got to ask you one last question before we wrap up, because I have a lot of people listening to this that often ask for words of wisdom or advice to get more into sharing the kind of understanding of health wellness, consumer trust, right? What would be your advice to someone either starting a company or going down the journey to become their healthiest self of where to start and what they can do?
Mm,
I mean, I always tend to say make small changes first. And
Mm,
it can be very overwhelming,
yep.
yes.
especially if you're just learning about all of this, to even think about where to start. And some people might want to go and like purge their entire house and their pantry and their refrigerator and just think about, all right, what do I need to replace all this stuff with? Take a deep breath, pick one thing to upgrade. Pick that
Yeah.
one thing and just like do that for a couple weeks. Once you're doing that without thinking about it anymore, pick another thing to upgrade. Slowly make the transition so that it's just not jarring and stressful for you because remember, stress is
Yes.
very bad. So that will defeat the purpose of it all. Pick
Yeah.
one thing, enjoy the process of slowly transforming. That's always what I like to say.
I
I
like
think
that
that's
one.
good. I think I would throw in the, shop around the outside of the grocery aisle.
Mm. Mhm.
Basically, don't go down the middle. Uh, Almost all of the seed oil is in the middle. There's still some on the outside. And maybe seed oil is a good place to start in terms of just cut it out. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if that's the one thing you could say, okay, I'm gonna cut out one thing. Start with seed oils
Yeah,
as the
that's a
place to start
very
because
good point.
they're very inflammatory
Yeah.
and they lead to a lot of other problems.
Yeah. No, I like those too because those are the small steps you could do. You could just say, I'm going to go in the grocery store today. My small one change is to shop around the outside and not shop for things with ingredients, but the actual ingredients.
Yeah.
Tomato doesn't have a nutritional fact of like, all the ingredients in it. It's just a tomato, right? Use that instead
Yes.
of the thing and start to get creative. I
Yeah.
think, cooking is one of the greatest things we could do for our health. Too often we throw something in a microwave that we don't even know what it is. It's not meant to go bad for months, so it's got to have something in there that
Right.
does that. And then we eat it and we say, oh, well, right? I
Yeah.
think it's, a step away from possibly convenience to more of a passionate kind of adventure in your health journey to create
It's like a
something
way
with
of
your
showing love
family.
to yourself and your family.
Yeah, yeah, it's the ultimate way to do that. And taking those little steps to do that are a great way. And one of the easiest little steps people could do is watch a documentary, right? So tell me, where can they see this? How can they get into this and learn more?
Yeah, Breaking Big Food is now available on Apple TV and Amazon Prime Video. So you can rent it or buy it on either of those two places. And if you like it, we would really, really appreciate a review on IMDb before the trolls come in and downvote us. Uh,
They're
yeah,
undoubtedly waiting.
they're
Yes.
undoubtedly on the way. That's
And help
right.
us spread the word, tell your friends, post on social if you like it. I think the more people that see it, the more people have a chance to be inspired. And this is just our little way of trying to make a difference. So I hope that anyone who watches it really truly enjoys it.
Well, you guys are definitely making a difference and your efforts go unnoticed. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for putting this out there. For everyone listening, please do go to breakingbigfood.com and support it. You could also go to jigsawhealth.com and you'll find more about them on Instagram, social media platforms. It will include everything in the show notes. Until next time, keep writing your own healing story.